The reign of the Romanov family ended when the Bolsheviks managed to overthrow the Russian Tsar Nicholas II during the Russian Revolution and executed him along with his family in the palace basement. After the revolution, the family was ordered to wear their clothes and descend into the basement of the house, where they lined up as if posing for a family photo. The Romanov family was then shot to death by Bolshevik forces. When the bodies were moved from the palace basement to a farm in complete secrecy, the news leaked through drunken soldiers, leading the Bolsheviks to burn the bodies in a nearby forest. After the execution of the family, the world witnessed many rumors regarding the youngest daughter of the emperor, named Anastasia, as dozens of women claimed to be Princess Anastasia Romanov, a story that inspired many writers and filmmakers for nearly a century. This led to claims from hundreds of women asserting that they were Princess Anastasia, the youngest daughter of the Tsar, which opened the door for investigations that continued for years. In Berlin, a young woman was found trying to jump into a canal in an attempted suicide but was saved and taken to a mental hospital after she absolutely refused to disclose her name, only referring to herself with a German title meaning, the unknown lady. She spoke with a heavy accent similar to Russian and then adopted the name Anna, which she used for the rest of her life. She befriended a patient in the same hospital, and the resident became interested in the case of this mysterious patient. When she read a description of the massacre of the Romanov family in the newspapers, the woman, named Clara Bethert, believed that this girl was connected to the slaughtered imperial family and thought she was the Tsar's second daughter, Tatiana. Mrs. Bethert advocated for Anna's case and arranged for a former maid of the deceased Tsarina to visit her. The Baroness arrived to see the claiming girl, but Anna Anderson was hiding from her under the bedcovers. The former maid firmly pulled her out and examined her, then confidently announced that she could not be Duchess Tatiana due to the obvious difference in height from the second daughter of the Tsar, who was the tallest of his daughters. However, Anna claimed she never said she was Tatiana but rather Duchess Anastasia, the youngest daughter of the Tsar, considering that her choice of the name Anna was because it is a shortening of the name Anastasia. Later, Anna Anderson presented a plausible story about how she escaped the massacre. She said she was injured and saved by a soldier who took her to Romania by smuggling her secretly. Then the soldier was killed, leaving her alone with no money and unable to contact anyone from her remaining family. She then arrived in Berlin searching for someone from her family, but found no outlet of hope and threw herself into the canal to kill herself. Anna Anderson was not the only one claiming to be a survivor of the Romanov family. Many others claimed to be the Tsar's daughters. There was a kind of trade in the stories of the murdered duchesses, to the extent that some fraudsters collected money from the simple and rural people to contribute to the transportation of the imperial family's remains to a safe place outside the country. Even Prince Alexei had some claiming his identity, the most notable of whom was a man named Nikolai Dalalsky. However, no one paid attention to their claims to the same degree, and the reason was that the illness of the prince and heir to the Tsar was very well known and famous. It was taken for granted that any wound, injury, or gunshot, even if it were in a non-lethal place, would be enough to kill the boy who inherited the curse of hemophilia from Anna Anderson's behavior was controversial. She was quiet and missed many opportunities to gain the support of some close to the imperial family she claimed to belong to, due to her silence and refusal to answer certain questions. If the woman was seeking to prove her case, why did she not make a greater effort to win more supporters to her side? According to the official narrative, the entire Romanov family was executed, based on the testimony taken from the main killer, Yakov Yurovsky, which was hidden for decades. However, Anna's story began to take a different turn with the emergence of figures inclined to support and believe her. Through the persuasion of some regarding her story, she was given a room after being released from the sanatorium in the home of Baron Arthur von Kleist, a Russian immigrant who was the chief of police in Russian Poland before the end of the Tsarist regime. In this Russian's home, who perhaps played a role in giving Anna Anderson's case a new direction by supporting her, despite the initial propaganda promoting her as the Duchess Tatiana, a visit was arranged for Princess Irene of Hesse, sister of Empress Alexandra, who met the girl who was then using the alias Miss Tchaikovsky. She observed her and simply declared that she completely denied being the daughter of her murdered sister. Then, some other scrutinizing examiners began to arrive to verify her identity. After Baroness Buxhovden and Princess Irene, it was the turn of the tutor of the Romanov family, who came out of his visit to Anna Anderson completely denying that this woman was Anastasia, accusing her of being an imposter. Then, a direct relative of the disputed deceased princess, Duke Hessen Ernst Louis, intervened, deciding to settle the matter in his own way. He hired a man to work as a private investigator and instructed him to follow the thread of the story of the woman who called herself Miss Tchaikovsky and claimed to be his niece. After a while, the private investigator revealed information that seemed like a bombshell. He found a photograph of a Polish worker named Francesca chankowska, who had worked in a munitions factory and lived in Berlin, but had mysteriously disappeared from a sanatorium shortly before being found attempting to commit suicide in one of the waterways in Berlin, where she introduced herself as Anna. The woman was indeed injured, but her wounds were not from gunfire on the night of the Romanov family's massacre. They were due to an explosion at the factory where she had worked shortly before her disappearance. A devastating blow to Anna's plans and claims, but an even stronger blow awaited her after an official statement was issued denying Anna Anderson's claims and announcing that she was neither Anastasia nor related to the Russian imperial family. The statement was signed by 12 relatives of Princess Anastasia. After the failure of her desperate attempts to gain official recognition of her claims to be the lost youngest daughter of the Tsar, which included some recognition from a few close to the former imperial family, such as Gleb Botkin, the son of the family doctor who was killed with them, and Princess Zinaida, a cousin of the real Anastasia, arrangements were made for the girl to travel to the United States. To avoid harassment from journalists in America, Anna abandoned the name Tchaikovsky, by which she was known, replacing it with her surname Anderson, which would accompany her for the rest of her life. Anna remained in the United States fighting for her case, where she fell into the hands of some fraudsters who tried to exploit her story to obtain money from the Romanov family or what remained of them. Due to the immense pressure she faced, Anna began to exhibit abnormal behavior and showed clear signs of mental instability, engaging in actions that were considered indicators of her deteriorating psychological and mental condition. Eventually, she was committed to a mental institution for nearly a year before being returned to Germany to be placed in a specialized psychiatric. But is she really the lost princess? Anna tried to resort to the German courts, claiming her share of the Romanov family inheritance, but the outbreak of World War II and Germany's entry into the war against Russia disrupted the proceedings, and it was not possible to file a case in a hostile country, considering that Anna was originally Russian. There were cases filed against her in Germany, and the case brought by Anastasia's relatives demanded an official ruling declaring Anna Anderson a liar in her claims, and the counter cases filed in Anna's name later became one of the longest-running legal battles in the history of the German judiciary, lasting intermittently for nearly 30 years. Anna lived in difficult circumstances and at one point lived alone in a cabin on the outskirts of the Black Forest, accompanied only by a group of cats. She was later found unconscious in her cabin and was taken to a hospital. She then left the hospital to accept an offer made by one of her few supporters, Gleb Botkin, to move back to the United States. With his help, she lived for a while in the United States until her visa was about to expire. But before she was deported from the country, she married an American history professor named Jack Manahan, whom she had met earlier and who was completely convinced of her story. After their marriage, he took on the title of Duke, as he was married to a former Grand Duchess, the daughter of the last Tsar of Russia. His goal in marrying her was to wed a descendant of the ruling family. However, Anna's situation did not stabilize after her marriage. Even her family life was abnormal. She lived with her husband in a house filled with a large number of cats, surrounded by filth and piles of garbage. The German courts finally resolved Anna Anderson's case after decades, declaring that she failed to prove she was the true Russian Anastasia. Thus, she lost her case after many long years, and nothing remained for her to live for. Both spouses suffered health issues, and it seemed that her husband's hope in his wife's case had faded, as did his hope of marrying a princess. The wife's condition deteriorated to the point that she was held in a hospital under legal guardianship. Her husband then kidnapped her, and they wandered around Virginia for 3 days, eating from stores. After several days, the police found them and forcibly returned the wife to the care facility. However, she suffered a suspected stroke, and the following month, she contracted pneumonia, which led to her death. Her body was cremated, and her ashes were buried in Germany. As for her husband, Jack Manahan, he lived for 6 more years before he passed away. Thus, the woman died, her true identity contested between two personas. Was she Francesca Chankowska, the mentally unstable Polish bomb factory worker, or was she Princess Anastasia? Did the terror she experienced at the hands of the murderous Bolsheviks and the shattering of her dreams, along with her family's denial of her, cause her to lose her psychological and mental balance, or did her madness lead her to believe she was a princess? It was said that this woman was subjected to injustice and that the heirs of the Romanov name may have deliberately denied her existence to distance her from the inheritance, or that the matter involved higher interests far beyond mere wealth and money. For more than 60 years, she claimed to be the daughter of the Tsar and his wife, and that she was the lost Princess Anastasia. She created a complete, enchanting imaginary world and played the role of the wronged victim of her remaining family members with great skill and credibility. With her tears and stories, she managed to gain support and many followers, some of whom were close to the Russian royal family or even family members themselves. On the other hand, her opponents insisted that she was a fake imposter, accusing her of greed for the Romanov family's inheritance and of mental instability and delusional perceptions. Each side built its case and established its arguments more on personal emotions and moral evidence to verify whether she was indeed the daughter of the Tsar as she and her supporters claimed, or the mad Polish factory worker Francesca chankowska as the other side asserted. Scientists decided to have Anna Anderson face the Romanov family she claimed to belong to after her death and undergo a delayed lie detector test that was more neutral and credible, and they would compare the remains from the grave. Anna's body had been cremated after her death, but there was still some tissue belonging to her that was well preserved. She had undergone surgery to remove an intestinal blockage, and the tissue extracted from her intestines was still available and well preserved. At the same time, scientists sought evidence for the second hypothesis insisted upon by Anna's detractors and managed to find a young man named Karl Notcher, who claimed to be a descendant of Francesca Chankowska's brother, and they obtained a blood sample from him for analysis and matching. Those few weeks were among the most exciting in the lives of those who believed in the validity of Anna Anderson's story and case. Tests were conducted, comparisons were made, and then the results emerged. The girl's genetic markers did not match those of the Romanov family, but they matched completely with the young man Notcher. She is indeed his relative, and she and her supporters lied. The Caesar had 4 daughters, 3 of whom were with him and their mother in the first grave, while the 4th was in the second grave with her brother, thus completing the family and bringing them together in death as in life. All claims by Anna Anderson and those who followed her, claiming to be survivors of the Caesar's family, are false and a clear deception. A wonderful and reliable scientific solution. The discovery of the family's remains in a mass grave in the Ural Mountains in later years was confirmed by subsequent DNA testing, identifying Nicholas, Alexandra, and their 3 daughters. However, the remains of Alexei and Anastasia remained a mystery until a second grave was discovered near the large mass grave. This grave contained the remains of 2 partially burned skeletons, which later DNA testing showed belonged to the youngest son, Alexei, and Anastasia, based on the age of the skeletons. Thus, the most famous story of Princess Anastasia, which has inspired many filmmakers and producers throughout the ages, came to a close. Science had its say and determined Anastasia's fate as dead. After the judiciary and royal family members had ruled she was alive, everyone refused to acknowledge her, claiming she was a liar, and science believed them, despite showing that the comparisons made during the case brought by the woman to prove her identity showed a nearly perfect match between her facial features and those of the Grand Duchess before her death. As for the match between the ears, it was perfectly identical, meaning it was a complete match at 100%. Secondly, Anna showed during her meetings with some of Anastasia's former acquaintances that she knew some specific details that would not have been easy for anyone other than the princess herself or those very close to her to know. Thirdly, the woman's insistence on continuing to prove her claim, despite not seeking any direct benefit from her story, stirs the imagination and carries some significance. Is Anna Anderson just a delusional woman who manipulated some people's minds and exploited the resemblance between her and the Russian princess, teaching her some truths and secrets, showing her how to become Anastasia, and making her master the role for their own benefit? It is possible that the mentally unstable woman believed the illusion that was planted in her mind and spent the rest of her life defending it because she did not know who she was. Anna Anderson was nothing but a poor fraud. Some exploited her illness and features to benefit from her, as evidenced by the fact that they abandoned her as soon as she failed in her claim and could not extract money from the remaining Romanov family. Finally, we say that there are mysteries in history that remain enigmatic because they are truly mysterious, and others remain so because some want them to stay mysterious